Love without respect does not survive. Affection fades, chemistry wears off. What remains, what actually sustains a relationship over years, is mutual regard. The quiet understanding that both people value each other's inner world, that neither positions themselves above the other, that communication flows without contempt. Disrespect doesn't usually announce itself with open hostility. It begins in language. Small phrases that seem insignificant in isolation, but reveal everything when they become patterns. These aren't slips of the tongue. They're windows into how someone actually sees you. Words aren't neutral. They carry emotional positioning. They signal hierarchy. When someone speaks to you in ways that dismiss your reality, deflect accountability, or communicate indifference, they're telling you something fundamental about how they view the relationship. What follows are 5 statements that, when used repeatedly, indicate respect has eroded beyond repair. Not isolated frustrations, not heat-of-the-moment reactions, but consistent messaging that reveals a dynamic where partnership has been replaced by something else entirely. Understanding these patterns isn't about creating paranoia. It's about recognizing when staying becomes self-abandonment, when patience stops being a virtue and starts being denial. The way someone speaks to you matters more than most people realize. Not just the content, but the framing, the tone, the underlying message about where you stand in their emotional hierarchy. John Gottman's research on relationship stability identified contempt as the single strongest predictor of breakup. Contempt isn't always loud. Often it's subtle, embedded in dismissive phrasing. In the small ways someone invalidates your experience or positions themselves as superior. These phrases function as psychological positioning. They establish who gets to define reality, who holds emotional authority, whose feelings are treated as legitimate versus whose are dismissed as overreaction. One comment doesn't define anything. Context matters, tone matters. But when certain phrases become the default response to your concerns, when they're no longer exceptions but patterns, they reveal a fundamental shift in how someone relates to you. Awareness doesn't require reaction, but it does require honesty about what's actually happening beneath the surface. If this resonates, subscribe to Femme Psychology with Emma. We explore relationship psychology with clarity, not noise. You're overreacting. Emotional invalidation wrapped in calm delivery. When you raise a legitimate concern and the response dismisses your perception entirely, something shifts. Not because your concern was trivial, but because the person you're addressing has decided your emotional reality is negotiable. Consider what this phrase actually does. It reframes the issue. Instead of addressing what you brought up, it redirects focus to your response. The problem isn't what happened. The problem is that you're not handling it correctly, that you're making too much of it, that your emotional reaction is the real issue. This is psychological deflection. It allows someone to avoid accountability by pathologizing your response. And over time, it trains you to question your own judgment, to suppress legitimate reactions because expressing them invites dismissal. Imagine raising something that bothers you, maybe a broken agreement, maybe a pattern of behavior that feels disrespectful. Instead of engagement, you're met with a calm assessment that you're being unreasonable, that it's not actually a problem, that you're creating conflict where none exists. What's happening beneath that exchange isn't conflict resolution, it's positioning. She's establishing herself as the rational one, the stable one, and you're being framed as reactive, unstable, unable to manage your emotions appropriately. Healthy communication doesn't require perfect agreement, but it does require validation. The acknowledgement that your feelings, even when inconvenient, are real. That your perspective, even when different from hers, deserves engagement. When dismissal becomes the standard response, respect has already left the relationship. You're just insecure. Character diagnosis used to avoid responsibility. This phrase transforms any concern you raise into evidence of personal inadequacy, not a boundary being crossed, not a relational issue that needs addressing, just your emotional deficiency revealing itself. The brilliance of this deflection is how cleanly it shifts burden. She doesn't have to examine her behavior. She doesn't have to consider whether your concern has merit. She simply labels it as insecurity, and the conversation ends. Over time, this creates a dynamic where bringing up issues becomes impossible. Because you know what's coming, not engagement, not curiosity about why you feel the way you do, just the assessment that you need to work on yourself. Think about expressing discomfort with how she speaks about you in public, or how certain interactions with others make you uneasy, or how decisions get made without your input. Instead of exploring the concern, you're told it's rooted in your insecurity, that if you were more secure, this wouldn't bother you. What's actually happening is blame displacement. The issue isn't her behavior. The issue is your inability to handle her behavior without emotional turbulence. This isn't partnership. This is superiority masked as psychological insight. And once that hierarchy is established, she never has to adjust, because anything you raise can be dismissed as your problem to solve, not hers to address. Relationships require space for vulnerability, for expressing discomfort without being pathologized, for concerns to be met with curiosity rather than diagnosis. When every issue you raise gets reframed as evidence of your inadequacy, the relationship has stopped functioning as a partnership. That's just how I am. The refusal to adapt dressed as authenticity. Relationships evolve, people adjust, not because they're compromising their identity, but because partnership requires considering how your behavior affects someone else. Growth isn't betrayal of self, it's recognition that connection matters. But this phrase shuts that door entirely. It positions behavior as immutable, as something you either accept or reject, but never negotiate. There's no room for conversation about impact, no space for mutual adaptation. Just a fixed position and the implicit message that if you can't handle it, that's not her concern. Consider raising something that consistently bothers you. Maybe how she handles conflict. Maybe how she communicates in certain situations. Maybe a pattern that feels dismissive or disrespectful. Instead of engagement, you're told this is who she is. Take it or leave it. What just happened? Negotiation ended. The possibility of adjustment vanished, and the burden shifted entirely to you. Either tolerate this or walk away. This isn't about demanding someone change their personality. It's about recognizing that healthy relationships involve ongoing adaptation, small adjustments, consideration of how behavior lands on the other person. When someone refuses to consider impact because that's just how I am, they're telling you something clear. Their way of being matters more than the relational dynamic. Their comfort is non-negotiable, and your experience of their behavior is irrelevant. That's not partnership. That's rigidity. And rigidity, when it replaces flexibility, signals that investment has already declined. I don't owe you anything. The dissolution of reciprocity. Partnerships operate on mutual care, not obligation, not transaction, but the quiet understanding that both people invest in each other's well-being. That effort flows naturally because the relationship matters. When someone frames their lack of investment as not owing you anything, they've fundamentally rejected that framework. What they contribute is now at their discretion, and your expectations of care, of effort, of consideration hold no weight unless they choose to acknowledge them. This phrase appears when partnership has been replaced by proximity, when the relationship no longer functions as a shared endeavor, but as two separate people occupying the same space. Imagine expressing frustration that effort has declined, that the small things that once communicated care have stopped. That investment feels one-sided. Instead of acknowledgement, you're told she doesn't owe you those things, that expecting them is unreasonable. Technically true. No one owes anyone anything. But partnership isn't built on obligation. It's built on choice, on willingness, on the decision to invest because the connection matters. When someone stops choosing to invest and frames that withdrawal as their right, they're telling you the relationship no longer holds priority, that their autonomy matters more than the partnership, that what you need from them is irrelevant. This isn't about demanding specific actions. It's about recognizing when mutual investment has been replaced by individualism, when care has become optional rather than natural. Once reciprocity collapses, what remains isn't a relationship. It's cohabitation without connection. Do whatever you want. Pay attention to this. Indifference disguised as permission. On the surface, this sounds like flexibility, like trust, like giving you space to make your own decisions. But in reality, it's the opposite. It's emotional withdrawal, the signal that she's stopped caring enough to engage. When someone genuinely cares, they have opinions. They participate in decisions. They express preferences because the outcome matters to them. But when they've detached, none of it matters anymore. Your choices don't affect them because they're no longer emotionally present. This is why indifference is more dangerous than conflict. Conflict means someone still cares. They're still invested enough to push back, but indifference means they've already left, even if their physical presence remains. Picture trying to make plans together, or discussing something that affects both of you. You ask for her input, and instead of engagement, you get a flat response. Do whatever you want. She doesn't care. At first, it might seem like she's being easygoing. But if you pay attention, you'll notice it's not ease, it's absence. She's not deferring out of trust. She's disengaging because she's no longer invested in the outcome. This phrase often emerges after the others have already become patterns. It's the final stage of emotional withdrawal, the point where even the pretense of caring has dissolved, and once indifference takes hold, there's nothing left to work with. You can address conflict. You can rebuild communication. You can work through resentment. But you cannot force someone to care. When disengagement becomes her default state, the relationship is already over. What remains is just the logistics of acknowledging it. Recognizing these phrases doesn't mean immediate action. It means awareness. Everyone has moments of frustration. Everyone says things they don't fully mean under stress. Isolated comments don't define relational health. But when these become the standard responses, when they're no longer exceptions but defaults, they reveal something deeper. The mature approach is observation without panic. Addressing patterns calmly, creating space for honest conversation about what you've noticed, and giving her the opportunity to engage with it. Sometimes awareness is enough to shift dynamics, but sometimes it isn't. And if bringing up the pattern results in more of the same, more dismissal, more deflection, more withdrawal, then you have clarity. Patterns are truth tellers. And once truth becomes undeniable, staying requires a different kind of honesty. Not about whether things might improve, but about whether you're willing to accept what already is. Closing. Walking away is self-respect. 25 minutes, 27 minutes. Walking away from disrespect isn't anger. It isn't retaliation. It isn't failure. It's the recognition that some dynamics cannot be repaired through patience alone. That respect, once gone, doesn't return simply because you endure its absence long enough. Staying in a relationship where dismissal has replaced engagement isn't strength. It's self-abandonment. And self-abandonment, no matter how noble it feels in the moment, erodes you in ways that become harder to recover from over time. You deserve communication that doesn't require you to suppress legitimate concerns. You deserve a partner who engages with your inner world rather than dismissing it. You deserve reciprocity, investment, presence. And if those things are absent, if respect has dissolved and there's no willingness to rebuild it, then staying isn't love. It's denial. Dignity isn't something you negotiate, it's something you protect. And sometimes protecting it means walking away from people who no longer honor it, not with bitterness, not with drama, just with the quiet certainty that you're worth more than being tolerated. Have any of these patterns shown up in your relationships? Drop a comment. Your perspective matters here. And subscribe to Femme Psychology with Emma for more depth on relationship dynamics most people never talk about openly.